I'm a 51-year-old man, and I want to share my story about my daughter, Samantha, and the emotional turmoil I'm currently facing after being excluded from her wedding. To understand the situation better, it's important to provide some background about our family dynamics. I married my ex-wife, Judith, when I was 24. We had known each other since childhood, and our relationship blossomed from that foundation. Judith came from a broken household, often spending her time at my home, where my parents treated her as family. Over time, my feelings for her grew stronger, and we eventually got married. At the time, both of us came from humble beginnings, working hard to build a life together. As a truck driver, I didn't have the means to attend college, and Judith, who worked as a waitress, also didn't pursue higher education. However, we were comfortable enough to get by. When Judith became pregnant with Samantha, she made the decision to stay home to raise our daughter. It was a financial strain for us, but it made sense because I was earning a steady income and we couldn't afford daycare. When Samantha turned 3, I changed jobs and got a promotion, which improved our financial situation significantly. For a time, things were going well. The economy was more favorable, and we were able to provide for Samantha without struggling. However, as Samantha started school, Judith began to feel restless and wanted to return to work. After much discussion, we agreed that I would cut back on my hours to help around the house while she found a job. Initially, this arrangement worked well for both of us. I was able to spend quality time with Samantha, helping her with homework and being present in her life. Judith, too, seemed happy to regain a sense of purpose outside the home. Unbeknownst to me, while I was bonding with our daughter, Judith was seeking a way out of our marriage. When she found a job at a cafe that catered to affluent clientele, she started to resent our financial situation. Despite our modest but comfortable life, she pushed me to work longer hours to earn more money. I resisted, prioritizing time with my family over chasing extra dollars. This period marked a turning point. Judith began coming home later and later, and I started feeling like a single parent, carrying the full weight of family responsibilities. I was exhausted from balancing work and parenting. When Judith came home drunk one night, I reached my breaking point. I confronted her about her behavior and demanded she take responsibility for being a mother. That was the moment Judith dropped the bombshell. She wanted a divorce and admitted to having an affair with someone she had met at work. In the following days, everything became a blur. Judith left me and Samantha for Stephen, a man with substantial wealth. Despite the heartbreak, my main concern was for my daughter's safety. Judith did not fight for custody. She seemed uninterested in being a mother. After the divorce, Judith occasionally visited, bringing expensive gifts for Samantha, attempting to compensate for her emotional absence. Meanwhile, I focused on raising Samantha alone, navigating the challenges of single parenthood. It wasn't easy, but I devoted myself to being there for her, attending school events and supporting her in sports. I tried to create a nurturing environment at home, aiming for openness and trust. However, it became increasingly clear that Judith's influence was affecting Samantha. Judith had married into wealth and showered Samantha with material gifts, which Samantha began to value more than the everyday love and support I provided. Over time, Samantha grew closer to her mother, often preferring her over me. It was a painful realization that despite my efforts, the bond we shared was being overshadowed by Judith's extravagant lifestyle. Now, as I come to terms with the fact that Samantha chose her mother's boyfriend to walk her down the aisle instead of me, I feel a profound sense of loss and betrayal. I've dedicated my life to raising her, and now I feel invisible in her life. It's difficult to grapple with the reality that, despite my love and commitment, I'm being sidelined in such a significant moment. This entire experience has left me feeling heartbroken and uncertain about my relationship with my daughter. All I wanted was to provide her with a loving home and support, yet it seems that my efforts have not been valued as I had hoped. I'm left wondering how we got to this point and what, if anything, can be done to rebuild the connection I once cherished with Samantha. The realization of my daughter Samantha's changing personality hit me slowly. In her childhood, I let her enjoy the excitement of shiny new toys, thinking it was just a phase of being a kid. I never imagined that this desire for novelty and excitement would influence her values and relationships as she grew older. When she turned 18 and expressed her wish to become a hairdresser, I supported her decision wholeheartedly. I enrolled her in a cosmetology course, and she poured herself into her studies. I was immensely proud when she graduated and found a job soon after. At first, I thought it was natural for her to be busy with work, especially in the challenging early months of her career. I missed the time we spent together, but I respected her independence and didn't want to make her feel guilty for pursuing her own life. However, as time passed, I started to sense a growing distance between us. It became apparent that she was deliberately avoiding me, and my attempts to connect with her often fell flat. Whenever I reached out or asked if I had upset her, she remained tight-lipped, leaving me feeling confused and hurt. We weren't estranged, but our closeness had diminished significantly. I had devoted myself to Samantha after my divorce from Judith. My priority was to raise her and provide a stable life, which left little room for my own needs or desires. I accepted my loneliness, believing that my dedication to her happiness was more important than pursuing my own social life. Yet, as Samantha distanced herself, I felt abandoned, as if she had started a new chapter without me. It hurt to see her reconnecting with her mother and seemingly favoring her over me, especially after all I had sacrificed for her. Fast forward to now. Samantha is 24 and recently got married. In the lead up to her wedding, I faced a heart-wrenching situation. A few weeks before the ceremony, she informed me that she did not want me to walk her down the aisle. I was crushed, as this was a moment I had dreamed of for years. When I asked her why, she explained that she viewed the tradition as patriarchal and unnecessary. While I respected her wishes, the news stung deeply. 2 days before the wedding, I learned from an accidental slip-up by her husband Mark that she had chosen someone else, her mother's boyfriend Stephen, to walk her down the aisle. This revelation devastated me. When I confronted Samantha, she initially denied it but eventually admitted the truth, claiming that she chose Stephen because he was not a middle-class piece of junk like me. At that moment, I felt a pain unlike anything I had experienced, even more than I had felt during Judith's infidelity. Mark tried to downplay the situation, saying that Samantha was simply trying to fit in with his upper-class family, but it was too late. Feeling disrespected, I told Samantha that I would not be attending the wedding. Mark expressed concern, saying it would hurt her because she loved me, but I stood firm. I spent that night in despair, drowning my sorrows in whiskey, feeling utterly miserable and defeated. I cut ties with Samantha, blocking her everywhere and telling her there would be no more relationship between us. It hurt to sever that connection, but I felt it was necessary after being pushed aside for so long. The day of the wedding arrived, and I was determined to stick to my decision. However, I received an unexpected call from Samantha early that morning, frantic and in tears. She was calling from a friend's phone because she was so upset. I struggled to understand her through her sobs, but I gathered that her mother, Judith, had shown up drunk and caused a scene at the wedding, which threatened to ruin everything. Judith's behavior was shocking, especially given that Mark's family was very conservative and proper. Samantha mentioned that Judith's antics had already led to Mark's parents threatening not to attend the wedding, which was the very reason I had been pushed out in the first place. Despite my daughter's distress, I felt a mix of emotions that clouded my compassion. My past hurt resurfaced as I realized that Samantha had chosen to embrace her mother, who had done so much to harm our relationship. I told her that I was sorry she was going through such a difficult time, but I could no longer offer anything more than words of support. She had chosen her family and the life she wanted, and now it was time for her to deal with the consequences of those choices. As I spoke those words, I felt as if I were tearing out my own heart. I hated that I had to reinforce my boundaries and risk losing her completely. However, I understood that allowing myself to be trampled on any longer would only lead to more pain. Samantha had made her choices, and it was time for her to face the reality of them. I dedicated my entire life to helping my daughter, always striving to be the supportive father she needed. Yet, she only seemed to view me as a means to an end, and this realization filled me with a sense of disgust and shame. I reached a breaking point when I decided I could no longer help her. During a phone call, she erupted in anger, screaming that if I didn't come to her aid this time, I was no father to her. I coldly responded that I often felt like I wasn't her father at all, given the way she treated me. With a heavy heart, I disconnected the call. About 15 minutes later, she tried to reach me again from the same number, but I chose not to respond. I was overcome with tears, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. I yearned to be there for my daughter, but it felt like she had ripped my heart out and trampled on it, treating my love and sacrifices as if they were worthless. My self-respect wouldn't allow me to continue this cycle of hurt. Now, I find myself wrestling with doubt. Was I too harsh? Should I have gone to her aid despite everything? I feel utterly lost and regretful. I haven't spoken to anyone about this, and she hasn't reached out to me either. I wonder if I made a grave mistake by abandoning her when she needed me the most. The confusion weighs heavily on me. I want to make things right, but don't know how. Many people have asked me why I hold such resentment towards Judith after all these years. They wouldn't understand unless they've had their hearts torn apart, spat on, and discarded like trash. I know Judith and Stephen have been together for 15 years, and perhaps they seem to be the real deal now, but that doesn't matter to me. What truly matters is that she chose to cheat on me, to be secretive and dishonest, rather than handle our breakup maturely. Judith abandoned her responsibilities as a mother, leaving me to raise our daughter alone while her new partner promised her a luxurious life. She used Stephen's money to keep my daughter away from me, successfully stealing her away and forcing me to live in misery. I refuse to forgive Judith for what she did to me and our family, no matter how many people think she and Stephen are meant to be together. At Sam's wedding, the drama between Judith and Stephen reached new heights. Judith arrived drunk and began flirting with Mark's father, creating an embarrassing scene that no one could ignore. Despite attempts to manage the situation, Stephen had to physically intervene to separate Judith from Mark's dad. Judith's shouting was loud and disruptive, and by then, the atmosphere was already tense. Their relationship, it seems, has been crumbling for a while. In her drunken state, Judith accused Stephen of being a hypocrite for cheating on her while demanding fidelity from her. She revealed their issues to the entire wedding party, admitting she knew about Stephen's affairs but felt trapped in the relationship because of the comfortable life he provided. It was clear she was struggling between wanting to keep their family together and the reality of his infidelity. As she unloaded all their marital problems in front of everyone, Stephen tried to defuse the situation, but Judith's rage only escalated. She began physically attacking him, scratching his face and pulling his hair. It was a chaotic scene that shocked everyone present. Guests were left uncomfortable and embarrassed by the spectacle unfolding at what was supposed to be a joyful occasion. Realizing how bad it had become, Mark's parents decided they could no longer stay. They were deeply humiliated, and they weren't alone. Several guests from Mark's side also chose to leave. Samantha, overwhelmed by the chaos, called me for help, but I couldn't bring myself to go. By the time we hung up, it was clear that the damage was done, and even Mark couldn't convince his parents to return. I feel a mix of frustration and sympathy for Samantha and Mark, knowing that Judith's reckless behavior has not only affected her life, but also rippled through so many others. I don't blame Mark's family for wanting to distance themselves from all the drama, and as for me, I'm left to grapple with my own feelings of betrayal and the impact of Judith's actions on my life. Judith has completely fallen apart, overwhelmed by the realization that she has sabotaged her own life by allowing her daughter to marry a cheater. She sat down on the floor and started howling, lamenting how her own choices have ruined her happiness. It's as if she's consumed by a sense of bitterness and resentment because her daughter, Samantha, is about to marry a nice boy, while Judith feels trapped in her own misery. This isn't just a random accident or a drunken mistake. I genuinely believe Judith's actions stem from a deep-seated narcissism. It feels like she deliberately tried to undermine her daughter's happiness because she never experienced that joy herself. The wedding day turned into a disaster, leaving Mark infuriated, while Samantha found herself in a state of despair. She reached out to me through an email, apologizing for her behavior, but simultaneously placing blame on me for not being there when she needed me. She insisted it was my duty as her father to support her, to take her side, and help restore some semblance of normalcy. I've chosen not to respond to her email. Although I have a lot to express, I know it would be futile. Samantha wouldn't understand my perspective or the pain I'm feeling. It's become clear to me that I need to prioritize my own well-being. Throughout my life, I've been selfless, always considering others before myself. But I've realized that I haven't received the same consideration in return. It's time for me to take a step back. I might eventually tell Samantha that I need space and that I'll reach out when I'm ready, but for now, I need to focus on myself. This chapter of my life feels like it's coming to an end, and I desperately want to move past the grief and frustration that lingers whenever I think about what has transpired between Samantha and me. There's a sense of poetic justice in what's happened to her. She was so worried about what Mark's parents thought of me, only to have her own parents be the ones to bring her humiliation on the most significant day of her life. As for updates on Samantha and Mark, there's no dramatic news to share. Many people hoped Mark would leave Samantha, but they are still together, and I'm not privy to their disagreements. Those are private matters between husband and wife, and I have no desire to intrude on their lives. I've done my best to support my daughter, but now it's time for me to step back completely. In a positive turn of events, I recently joined a biker club in my town where we meet weekly for drinks. I've made some friends there, which feels refreshing. One of the younger members of the club encouraged me to create a dating app profile, and he even helped set it up. They've been pestering me to share if I get any matches, and one of them is coming over today to give me tips on how to interact with women and score a date. I'm feeling nervous, but there's also a sense of excitement. After so many years of feeling isolated, it's invigorating to have a social circle again. I have my first date today with a woman named Casey, a pseudonym. She got divorced a couple of years ago because her husband was a significant mama's boy, and her mother-in-law interfered in their relationship. She finally reached a breaking point and left him. Our connection has been building over our conversations, and while we're just meeting for drinks to see where things go, I like her and enjoy the attention. After years of feeling starved for affection, it's nice to interact with someone kind and beautiful. My friends are so excited for this date. They even helped me pick out my outfit, showing me that this occasion is more significant than I realized. I've been given a list of do's and don'ts to memorize, and they're all eagerly awaiting my update afterward. At 50, it feels a bit silly to have a crush, but I can't help it. Casey seems wonderful, and I'm genuinely looking forward to spending time with her. It feels liberating to embrace this new chapter, to have fun, and engage in something beyond my responsibilities. I've longed for this for as long as I can remember, and I hope this feeling lasts. If everything goes well, I'll be sure to share the details with my friends, and maybe with you too.